You call yourself a man? Prove it. The words cut through the silence, a direct and unapologetic challenge from a seasoned Stoic philosopher. No room for excuses, no tolerance for weakness. This is a summons to the very core of your manhood. Too often, we hear men boast about what it means to be a real man. They wax poetic about courage, sacrifice, and strength of character. But when the moment of truth arrives, when life's trials put their mettle to the test, where do they stand? Do they have the unwavering backbone, the unshakable resolve to weather the storms that true masculinity demands? As the great Stoic thinker Marcus Aurelius said, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." So I ask you now, my fellow men, what are the true measures of your ambitions? Are you content to blend into the crowd and let life happen to you, rather than seizing it with both hands and shaping it to your will? No, a real man knows that comfort is the enemy of greatness. He understands that the path to becoming the best version of himself requires embracing hardship, cultivating uncompromising self-discipline, and shouldering the burdens of responsibility without complaint. This is not a call for the faint of heart. This is a challenge for those who dare to forge their own way, to carve their names into the annals of history through sheer force of will. So I ask you again, do you have what it takes to prove your worth as a true man? The choice is yours. The time for action is now. I challenge you to prove your worth as a true man. Show some backbone and act like a man. As the great Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once proclaimed, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." We must grapple with this foundational truth as we strive to become the men we were meant to be. Too often, we allow the world to define manhood for us by the cars we drive, the clothes we wear, and the money we accumulate. But true masculinity is not found in material trappings or the opinions of others. It is forged through the crucible of adversity, tempered by our willingness to make difficult sacrifices and honed by an unwavering resolve in the face of hardship. Throughout history, countless examples of men have embodied this uncompromising spirit. Take the men of the Titanic, for instance. As the great ship sank, they could have panicked and fought for their own survival. Instead, they ensured the women and children were evacuated first, showing their mettle in the face of certain death. Or consider the actions of Navy SEAL Kyle Carpenter. During a firefight in Afghanistan, Carpenter made the split-second decision to throw himself onto a live grenade to shield his fellow Marine. Though the blast ravaged his body, he survived, later stating, "I didn't feel like dying that day." These stories inspire us and remind us of the greatness that lies dormant within each of us. But make no mistake, the path to such nobility is paved with pain, toil, and hardship. It requires us to push past our natural tendencies to do what is difficult rather than what is comfortable. This is where self-discipline becomes the bedrock of our manhood. It's not enough to want success or to dream of being better. We must be willing to do the things we don't feel like doing, to embrace the suck, to forge ourselves into the men we know we can become. Look at the story of David Goggins, a former Navy SEAL who, by his own admission, was a fat, lazy, undisciplined kid before transforming himself into one of the toughest men on the planet. Goggins didn't have some magical genetic advantage. He refused to quit, to make excuses, to let his circumstances define him. And that, my brothers, is the essence of true manhood. The willingness to be reborn through adversity, to let the fires of hardship forge us into something stronger, more resilient, more capable than we ever thought possible. It doesn't matter where you started from, what obstacles you've faced, what failures you've endured. What matters is whether you're willing to keep going, refuse to be broken, or stand tall in the face of whatever life throws your way. Because make no mistake, the path to becoming a real man is not easy. There will be moments where you want to quit, where you'll be tempted to succumb to self-pity or find solace in temporary distractions. But it is in those darkest moments that the true measure of your manhood will be revealed. So I challenge you now, dig deep, summon your courage, and show the world what you're made of. Let your actions, sacrifices, and unwavering resolve prove your worth as a man. As the Stoics taught, the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. The choice is yours. The time for action is now. It's all about self-control, which defines a man. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies the belief that true strength comes not from our ability to dominate others, but from our mastery over ourselves. As the great Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." This principle of self-control is the foundation upon which true masculinity is built. It is not enough to desire success or to dream of becoming a better version of ourselves. We must be willing to do the things we don't feel like doing, embrace the discomfort, and push past the natural inclinations of our minds and bodies. You see, the emotionally immature man seeks motivation to do something difficult just once. But the emotionally mature true man has cultivated the discipline to do that hard thing 1,000 times over. He understands that feelings are fleeting, that emotions can deceive us, and that we only forge the strength of character that defines our manhood through consistent, unwavering action. Look at the story of David Goggins once more. Here was a man who, by his own admission, was weak, undisciplined, and content to live a life of mediocrity. But he made a decision. He would no longer be a slave to his feelings, to the voice in his head that told him he couldn't. Instead, he would become the master of his mind, the architect of his destiny. Goggins transformed himself from an overweight, unmotivated individual through sheer force of will into one of the world's toughest endurance athletes. He didn't have any special genetic gifts or a team of trainers and nutritionists to help him. All he had was an unbreakable commitment to self-discipline, a refusal to quit no matter how much his body and mind protested. I see this dynamic play out repeatedly in my own life and the lives of the men I've had the privilege of coaching. Just the other day, I was talking to a young man who was frustrated that he couldn't seem to make progress on his fitness goals. "I can stop doing anything," he lamented, "except my frappuccinos." At that moment, I knew he didn't have what it took, because a real man doesn't make excuses. He makes sacrifices. He understands that the path to becoming the best version of himself requires doing the things he doesn't feel like doing, even when every fiber of his being rebels against it. I remember my journey when I walked into that Navy recruitment office at 297 pounds and was told in no uncertain terms that I didn't have what it took to be a SEAL. At that moment, I could have crumbled, accepted the officer's dismissal, and resigned myself to mediocrity. But the Stoic in me wouldn't allow it. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'll prove you wrong." Over the next 3 months, I pushed my body to the absolute limit, shedding over 100 pounds through sheer willpower and discipline. When I returned to that same office, the look on that officer's face was priceless. You see, I hadn't just lost weight. I had forged myself into a new man, one who refused to be defined by his circumstances, one who was willing to embrace the suck and endure whatever hardship was necessary to achieve his goals. And that, my brothers, is the crux of it all. And that, my brothers, is the crux of it all. Self-discipline is about more than achieving a certain level of fitness or success. It's about redefining who you are at the most fundamental level. It's about taking full responsibility for your life, choices, and future, and refusing to make excuses or succumb to the whims of your emotions. Because make no mistake, the path to true manhood is not an easy one. There will be moments when you want to quit, and you'll be tempted to seek solace in temporary distractions or the warm embrace of self-pity. But it is in those darkest moments that the true measure of your manhood will be revealed. Will you be the man who gives in to his weaknesses, who allows the world to define him? Or will you be the one who embraces the suck, who refuses to be broken, who forges himself into an unstoppable force of will and determination? The choice, my friends, is yours. But know this: the rewards that await you on the other side of that crucible are beyond measure. When you have mastered your mind, body, and very being, there is no challenge you cannot overcome, no obstacle you cannot surmount. You will become a man among men, a living embodiment of the Stoic principles that have guided the greatest of our kind throughout history. In doing so, you will inspire others, leave an indelible mark on this world, and discover a sense of purpose, power, and true fulfillment that can only come from complete self-mastery. So I ask you now, are you ready to take the first step? The time for action is upon us. Let us forge ahead together and show the world what true manhood is all about. Be there for your family in every way. We must remember that strength without purpose is meaningless. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This speaks to a fundamental truth, that a real man's power lies not in domination, but in his ability to be a positive force for those around him, especially his family. Consider the example of Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States. Known for his toughness and adventurous spirit, Roosevelt was also a devoted family man. When his first wife died, on the same day as his mother, Roosevelt was devastated. He wrote in his diary, "The light has gone out of my life." Yet, despite his grief, Roosevelt didn't abandon his responsibilities. He raised his daughter, continued his political career, and eventually remarried, becoming a loving father to 5 more children. Roosevelt understood that being a man meant being there for his family, no matter the circumstances. We see this same spirit in the actions of Oskar Schindler during World War II. Schindler, a German industrialist, could have easily prioritized his comfort and safety during the Nazi regime. Instead, he risked everything, his wealth, his reputation, and his very life, to protect over 1,000 Jewish refugees. Schindler's actions remind us that true manhood often requires sacrifice. It demands that we put the needs of others, our families, and our communities above our desires and comforts. But being there for your family isn't just about grand gestures or heroic sacrifices. It's about the day-to-day commitment to being present, engaged, and the rock upon which your loved ones can always rely. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s example. Despite the enormous pressures of leading the civil rights movement, facing constant threats, and spending time in jail, King always made time for his family. His wife, Coretta Scott King, recalled how he often played with their children, read them stories, and discussed his work with them. King understood that his fight for justice began at home, with his commitment to his family. He once said, "The group consisting of mother, father, and child is the main educational agency of mankind. By being a present and engaged father, King wasn't just raising children. He was nurturing the next generation of leaders. When we fulfill our responsibilities to our families, we create a ripple effect that extends far beyond our immediate circle. We set an example for our children, showing them what it means to be a man of integrity who can be counted on. Consider the story of Zhang Hua, a Chinese migrant worker who walked over 40 kilometers daily for months to send money back to his family. Zhang's dedication ensured his children could receive an education, breaking the cycle of poverty. His son, inspired by his father's sacrifice, became a successful engineer, lifting the entire family out of hardship. This is the power of being there for your family. It's not just about providing financially. It's about being emotionally present, setting an example, and creating a legacy that will outlive you. So I challenge you now, my brothers, look at your lives and your relationships with your families. Are you truly being the man they need you to be? Are you present, engaged, and willing to sacrifice your own comfort for their well-being? If not, it's time to step up. Remember, as Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Your family needs you. Your community needs you. The world needs men who understand that true strength lies in their ability to be there for others. The path may take work. There will be times when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you'd rather retreat into your own world. But that's when your manhood is truly tested. That's when you have the opportunity to prove what you're made of. Be the man who shows up day after day, no matter the circumstances. Be the rock upon which your family can always rely. In doing so, you'll fulfill your responsibilities as a man and create a legacy that will echo through generations. Show kindness and understanding. As we delve deeper into what it truly means to be a man, we must confront a truth that many find challenging. Strength is not dominance or aggression, but wisdom and compassion. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Consider the example of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison under the brutal apartheid regime, Mandela had every reason to seek revenge. Instead, he chose the path of reconciliation and forgiveness. Upon his release, he said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." Mandela's strength wasn't in his ability to punish his oppressors, but in his capacity for forgiveness and his vision for a united South Africa. This is the essence of true manhood, the ability to rise above our baser instincts and choose the path of wisdom and understanding. History gives us numerous examples of men who understood that true strength lies in empathy and kindness. Take the story of Oskar Schindler, whom we mentioned earlier. Schindler's transformation from a profiteering businessman to a savior of over 1,000 Jews during the Holocaust was rooted in his growing empathy for the suffering around him. Or consider the actions of Hugh Thompson during the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. When Thompson, a helicopter pilot, witnessed U.S. soldiers killing unarmed civilians, he didn't turn a blind eye. Instead, he landed his helicopter between the soldiers and the villagers, ordering his crew to fire on their fellow Americans if they continued the massacre. Thompson's moral courage saved dozens of lives and showed that true manhood often means standing up against injustice, even when it's difficult or unpopular. Being kind and understanding also means having the courage to be vulnerable. Many men mistakenly believe that showing emotion or admitting weakness is unmanly. But history's greatest leaders have shown us otherwise. Abraham Lincoln, one of America's most revered presidents, was known for his empathy and emotional intelligence. Despite leading the country through its bloodiest war, Lincoln never lost touch with his humanity. He regularly visited field hospitals to comfort wounded soldiers, wrote heartfelt letters to the families of fallen soldiers, and was known to weep openly at the suffering caused by the war. Lincoln's ability to connect with others on an emotional level wasn't a weakness. It was a source of strength that inspired loyalty and respect among his followers. So I challenge you now, brothers, look at your lives and at how you interact with those around you. Are you showing the kindness and understanding that true manhood requires? Are you brave enough to be vulnerable, show empathy, and stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult? Remember, as Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In a world that often glorifies aggression and dominance, choose to be different. Choose to be the man who lifts others, seeks to understand before being understood, and dares to be kind in the face of cruelty. This doesn't mean being weak or passive. On the contrary, it takes immense strength to choose compassion when faced with hostility and to seek understanding when confronted with ignorance. But this is the path of true manhood, a path that not only makes you a better man, but also makes the world a better place. Be the man who brings light to dark places, offers a hand to fallen people, and stands firm against injustice. In doing so, you embody the highest ideals of manhood, strength tempered by wisdom and power guided by compassion. Make sacrifices when needed. As we approach the culmination of our journey into true manhood, we must confront one of its most challenging aspects, the willingness to sacrifice. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." Consider the legendary tale of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. King Leonidas led these men against an overwhelming Persian force, knowing their stand would likely cost them their lives. Their sacrifice bought crucial time for the Greek city-states to unite and ultimately repel the invasion. This extreme example illustrates a fundamental truth about manhood. Sometimes we must be willing to put everything on the line for a cause greater than ourselves. But sacrifice isn't always about grand, heroic gestures. Often it's about the small daily choices we make. Take the example of Mahatma Gandhi. His life was a constant sacrifice of personal comfort to pursue India's independence and social justice. He gave up a lucrative law career, embraced a life of poverty, and endured multiple imprisonments for his beliefs. Or consider the sacrifices made by countless unnamed fathers throughout history. These men worked back-breaking jobs, gave up their dreams, and went without so their children could have better lives. These unsung heroes embody the essence of manhood, the willingness to put the needs of others before one's own. Remember, as Marcus Aurelius said, the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. When we choose to make sacrifices, we're not just giving something up. We're transforming ourselves. We're proving that we have the strength to endure discomfort, the wisdom to see beyond our immediate desires, and the courage to act for the greater good. So I challenge you now, brothers. What are you willing to sacrifice for the things that truly matter? Are you ready to give up comfort for growth, to trade easy pleasures for lasting fulfillment? Remember, true manhood isn't about what you gain, but what you're willing to give up. It's about having the courage to do what's right, even when it costs you. It's about being the kind of man who can be counted on when the stakes are high and the price is steep. Be that man. Be the one who steps up when others step back. Be the one who carries the weight when others falter. In your willingness to sacrifice, you'll find not just the essence of manhood, but the best version of yourself. The world needs men who understand the power of sacrifice. Will you answer the call? No whining. Do what needs to be done. As we reach the final stretch of our journey into true manhood, we come to a principle that separates men from boys: the ability to face life's challenges without complaint and to do what needs to be done. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Consider the story of Admiral James Stockdale, who spent 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Despite enduring torture and solitary confinement, Stockdale never lost his resolve. He developed a code of conduct for his fellow prisoners, organized a covert communications network, and consistently resisted his captors' attempts to use him for propaganda. When asked about his experience, Stockdale didn't complain about his suffering. Instead, he said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect, I would not trade." History is filled with examples of men who chose action over complaint and faced adversity head-on without wasting energy on self-pity. Think of Ernest Shackleton, whose Antarctic expedition became trapped in ice for nearly 2 years. Instead of despairing, Shackleton led his men on an 800-mile journey in small lifeboats, ensuring that every single member of his crew survived against impossible odds. Or consider the example of Louis Zamperini, an Olympic runner who survived 47 days adrift at sea during World War II, only to be captured and sent to a Japanese prisoner of war camp. Despite enduring unimaginable hardships, Zamperini never gave up. After the war, rather than being consumed by bitterness, he chose forgiveness and dedicated his life to helping troubled youth. But this principle isn't just for extreme situations. It applies to our daily lives as well. Think of the countless men throughout history who faced poverty, discrimination, or personal setbacks without allowing these challenges to define them. Take the story of Benjamin Franklin, who arrived in Philadelphia as a penniless runaway at the age of 17. Instead of complaining about his circumstances, Franklin worked tirelessly, continually educating himself and seizing every opportunity. He became one of the founding fathers of the United States, a renowned scientist and a successful businessman. So I challenge you now, brothers. When faced with obstacles, will you waste your energy on complaints and excuses? Or will you channel that energy into action, into doing what needs to be done? Remember, as Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In a world where many seek to avoid responsibility and blame others for their problems, choose to be different. Choose to be the man who faces challenges head-on, takes responsibility for his life, and does what needs to be done without fanfare or complaint. This doesn't mean you can't acknowledge difficulties or seek help when needed, but it does mean facing life's challenges with resolve and determination, rather than self-pity and excuses. Be the man who others can rely on in a crisis. Be the one who rolls up his sleeves and gets to work when things get tough. In doing so, you solve problems more effectively, inspire those around you, and build an unshakable inner strength. The world needs men who understand that actions speak louder than complaints. Will you be that man? Will you do what needs to be done, regardless of the difficulty or whether you feel like it or not? The choice is yours, but remember, true manhood is forged in the crucible of adversity. tempered by the willingness to face life's challenges without flinching. So stand tall, square your shoulders, and do what needs to be done. That's what real men do. Embrace the Stoic path. As we end our journey, it's time to reflect on the path of true manhood we've explored. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This encapsulates the essence of what it means to be a man in the truest sense. Throughout this discussion, we've delved into the core tenets of manhood. 1. Showing backbone and acting like a man. 2. Exercising self-control. 3. Being there for your family. 4. Showing kindness and understanding. 5. Making sacrifices when needed. 6. Doing what needs to be done without complaint. These aren't just abstract concepts. They are the pillars upon which great men have built their lives and legacies throughout history. Consider Marcus Aurelius himself. As Roman emperor, he faced constant challenges, wars, plagues, and political intrigue, yet he never lost sight of his principles. In his personal writings, later published as meditations, we see a man constantly striving to better himself, to live up to the ideals of Stoicism, even in the face of immense pressure. Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This simple yet profound statement challenges us to move beyond mere talk into action. Think about the men we've discussed throughout this video. Men like Theodore Roosevelt, Nelson Mandela, Hugh Thompson, and James Stockdale. These men didn't just talk about virtue or manhood. They lived it. They faced adversity head-on, made difficult choices, and left the world better than they found it. Their legacies continue to inspire generations after them. This is the power of embracing true manhood. It's not just about improving our lives, but about setting an example that can change the world. So, I challenge you one last time. Will you embrace this Stoic path of manhood? Will you commit to living a life of principle, courage, and unwavering integrity? Remember, becoming this kind of man isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice, a constant striving to be better than you were yesterday. It means repeatedly choosing the difficult right over the easy wrong. It means being willing to stand alone, if necessary, to do what's right, even when it's unpopular. But know this, in making these choices, in embracing this path, you join a brotherhood of men stretching back through history. Men who understood that true strength lies not in domination, but in self-mastery. Men who knew that real power comes from living a life of principle and purpose. As we conclude, I want you to imagine the impact you could have if you fully embraced this path. Imagine the example you could set for your children, community, and world. Imagine the legacy you could leave behind. The world needs men of principle now more than ever. Men stand firm in the face of adversity, lift others, and do what's right, no matter the cost. Will you be that man? The choice is yours. The path is clear. Now, it's time to act. Go forth and be the man you were meant to be. The world is waiting.